Hello and welcome. My name is Hector Del Castillo, Chief Product Officer at Bolt PM, and I'd like to welcome all of you to a summary of our roundtable discussion for the Business Intelligentsia DC meetup. And the topic of this particular roundtable is to discuss how M&A is transforming the business intelligence and analytics market. And this discussion started from an article that I read from Solutions Review magazine. It's actually an online magazine and publication, a market research firm that publishes information, and they're tracking a lot of the players in the business intelligence and analytics market. So let's get started. First of all, I'd like to thank people over at Make Offices for hosting our meetup on a monthly basis. And we'll let you know more information, but Make Offices is actually a co-working location out of Tysons, and they are a venue sponsor for us, providing us space so we can meet at their conference room. Also, special thanks to Intelligent, and Intelligent is an IT integrator of analytics and also business intelligence solutions for organizations that need help in doing some of this integration work that is needed in order to ensure that they have the right solutions implemented for their staff. And if you haven't already done so, you can actually check in, and we'll be sending a link via email where you will actually be able to view a landing page with the information, and we'll put the entire presentation, the slide deck, as well as the video where you can view the information to get a summary of the discussion. Also, for those of you who are brand new, we are a meetup community of over 1,900 like-minded data analytics, business intelligence professionals, and we're seeking to massively improve companies through the better use of data and business intelligence. And we meet on the first Thursday of each month at Make Offices Tysons. That's our usual location where we meet. More information if you actually follow the link on this slide, in the middle of the slide. And also, if you're interested in hosting or sponsoring a demo at a future meetup, because you either have a platform or an application suite, business intelligence or analytics or big data, any of those things, even cloud-based warehouse data solutions, you actually can reach out to us and we can set up an appointment so we can discuss a suitable topic, speaker, and demo, so that we can actually lock it in for a future meetup. And you can get more information on the link at the bottom of this of the slide. There's a page for more information about 7 reasons why you should consider hosting or sponsoring an event with us. Today's agenda, and we actually already had a chance to network and introduce each other, but today's agenda is going to be about announcements and also discussing this roundtable and the format of the roundtable and the reasons why we're going to discuss and kind of get information about what everybody else has heard about some of these players that have been doing acquisitions in the first half of 2019. And then we'll encounter questions as well, and we'll be able to make this video available to everyone after today's live session. So first off, announcements. Anyone who has information about upcoming conferences or summits that are near or around the DC metro area, for anyone that may be interested in attending, please let us know. And we're asking our members, we've been asking them to add that information on the comments in the meetup page. And you can actually get to the meetup page for this particular session using the link at the bottom of the slide. And you can actually use that information to actually add any conferences or summits that you are aware about, and share links where people can get more information and register if they're interested in doing so. Also, if you have any jobs available with your employer or your company, or if you are actually looking to get hired because you're looking for your next career move, make sure you reach out and add your information on the comments page so that anyone who is either looking for a new career or they're actually have a job, maybe be able to connect with each other via our meetup page. And feel free to share any other comments about related news or information that is being shared by different organizations regarding anything that has to do with business intelligence, analytics, data management, data architecture. Also, we are just launching this new landing page, and this new landing page actually has an archive of all of the previous meetups that we've had. We have been collecting a suite of information, including the slides from presentations and demos, as well as videos and podcasts that we've been recording in some sessions. Most sessions we have been recording either a podcast or a video, and we always are making also the slides and sharing those with our members. And you can actually go to the link at the bottom of this page and you'll see a list of all the recent meetups that we've had, and you can navigate then to the specific page that has more content and more information if you either need to review it or view it for the first time because you might have missed that particular session. Also, we're looking for feedback. If you can provide us via comments on the meetup page, what are the topics, what are the type of demos, what platforms you're interested in us reaching out to someone so that they can come in. Let us know, because we're always looking for speakers, topics, and platforms to host. And also we're looking for sponsors, anyone who's willing to sponsor either a meetup, a demo, or even workshops to offer to our members. So reach out to us, and there's information where you can actually request an appointment with us if you are interested in either hosting or sponsoring a future meetup. So let's go ahead and get started. We mentioned that today's topic is really looking at a flurry of acquisitions that have been happening the first half of 2019. And there's an article that I found in Solutions Review, and a lot of the information that we're going to be sharing comes straight out of that article. And I actually have analyzed that information along with other things that we've looked at earlier this year. Things like the Gartner Magic Quadrant for business intelligence and analytics platforms, along with a few other things that we've touched on at earlier meetups this year. And we're going to be summarizing and kind of correlating the information that was published by Solutions Review and other information that we've been able to gather over time regarding some of the players involved in the business intelligence and analytics platform providers. First thing, if you're on Twitter, be sure to use these particular hashtags. Hashtag BIDC, that is the Business Intelligentsia DC meetup handle or hashtag. Also, you can use the meetup hashtag and then use my own HM Del Castillo, my handle at HM Del Castillo, and also at Simtelligent Inc. And you can actually either share pictures or information or any comments, and make sure that at least you're engaging your followers, and we'll be more than glad to like or retweet any information that might ponder some ideas, some suggestions, maybe even comments about your perspective, your opinions about what we're discussing today. So today's discussion is going to focus around this question: what is really driving this recent flurry of acquisitions in the industry? Basically these are business intelligence and analytics platform providers and vendors acquiring each other. And we're going to be looking at a few. And first of all, let's kind of analyze the current situation in the marketplace. So first off, the size of the market. Big data is big business. No matter what reports, and actually have found a couple of them that have been published recently, and they're looking at the next 10 years, forecasting demand globally. And often you can actually break this down by region. So North America versus Europe versus Asia, so on and so forth. But they're all saying that the global demand for business intelligence and analytics applications and the market in 2017 is big, on the order of at least over 22, almost $23 billion in 2017. Some other reports are actually saying even higher than that. And sometimes you often have to take a look at the details, because they're not always going to be slicing the market or tracking it the same way. And sometimes the details do matter. So you want to make sure that at least you pick maybe a handful of reports and start looking at best case scenario, worst case scenario, and then try to figure out what is most likely for you if you are a platform provider, or if you're actually selling into other industries and markets that may have different levels of competition. So this particular report, the source is stated at the bottom of the slide, and actually the executive summary, which I found, mentioned this particular information. And they're also saying that projecting moving forward all the way out to 2026, there's the compound annual growth rate of this market is on the order of about 10.4% per year. And that is pretty big. And that the total is going to rise to just over $55.5 billion globally. And as I mentioned, this is one of the more conservative reports, because other reports that I was able to grab are saying that it's going to get even bigger. And what's reality and what is fact and what is fiction? This is where there's a lot more analysis needed to really get to what you really think is achievable in the marketplace, and start looking at all the what if scenarios to start planning and forecasting accordingly. What we'll discuss today is looking at some other facts and figures that I've been able to find, and these are all available. So I'm going to be sharing the sources so that you can go and review them and research them, investigate them further if you are interested in making sure that you're going to be using that information. Make sure you vet this information, because I haven't done any vetting. I'm just sharing it because I found it, and it might put context into exactly what is happening and why these acquisitions have been happening in the first half of 2019. So the first thing that we're going to be sharing some of these facts and figures, and the first fact and figure is talking about the latest Gartner Magic Quadrant that is evaluating the business intelligence and analytics platforms. And what you see here is a lot of players across most of the quadrants, and as you see, the majority of them are cluttered at the bottom of this. So first of all, what is the difference between being a leader versus a challenger versus a visionary versus a niche player? Let's talk about that, because the Magic Quadrant really evaluates each vendor based on vision completeness and their ability to execute. So they're looking at really the design of their business strategy and their ability to execute. And when you are going to be a leader, for example, you need to be great at both the strategy design and execution. And everybody else, for the most part, may have some gaps between their strategy and their ability to execute. And this is the reason why they end up being in other quadrants. So being a leader in the leader quadrant means that you're ranked at the top of the matrix, and you score higher on both the criteria of your strategy and then your ability to execute. And generally, these vendors are established businesses with large and diverse customer bases and very strong market positions. And that is the common denominator of anybody who is in a leader quadrant. If you're a challenger are companies that are really close to being challenging the leaders, but these vendors tend to lack either vision, or they are lacking a little bit on the potential to execute. And that's the reason why they're challengers. And there's a difference between the challengers and the leaders. But the challengers could, with some moves, be able to start challenging the leaders. And this is where, the closest quadrant, if you're not a leader, you want to be a challenger. The other quadrants and the visionaries are really usually smaller companies. These are usually younger companies with reasonable visions, and that they're moving pretty quickly, and they're just executing furiously, and they end up in the visionary quadrant. The niche players typically are also younger companies or newer companies that often lack both on the vision side as well as on their ability to execute. What's important to note about this is that there are many players. The majority of players, according to Gartner, are nichers or they're visionaries. And we know that those are not necessarily the quadrants you want to be in, because most everybody wants to be at some point in the leader quadrant or the challenger. Those are the two best, is being on the top half of that quadrant. And if you see what's been happening when you're comparing, the same quadrant in 2016 compared to 2019, you see for the most part that the bottom half of the quadrants over a period of 3 years is very crowded. Now, the other thing to note is that there's a few new players or different players on the bottom half, both nichers and visionaries. And the one thing that you see is that 3 to 4 companies are leaders, few or no challengers, and the only exception is now MicroStrategy, because of their whatever work they've been doing, is now back up as a challenger, just on the hairy edge of being a borderline challenger to the leaders. And what you're seeing is that, in essence, Tableau is leading, getting further out in a unique position compared to everybody else. And then Microsoft also is killing it, especially with their Power BI application suite. And Qlik has also remained in the leader quadrant over the period of 3 years. But there's something new, and that is ThoughtSpot, which is a newer company that just came out of stealth mode last year in 2018, has now made the quadrant, and they ended up as a leader. And actually, ThoughtSpot is one of our most recent sponsors, and we actually have their presentation last year where they came in and presented their solution, and we found out that very early on they were going to be set and positioned to actually be a leaders from the very beginning, even though they just came out from stealth mode, being a stealth mode company. So those are the common denominators, and what you see is that very few companies over the period of 3 years have actually been able to move up into the challenger or the leader position. Now, Logi, which is one of the local companies, has pretty much remained, gone from being a visionary to being a nicher, and in essence, they're now entrenching themselves as being a nicher. And we'll talk about some of these things what's been happening and why companies like Logi have gone from being a visionary to being a nicher, and they're not a startup. They're already a mid-market company, and by design, their strategy is to just remain nichers. That's really their strategy right now, is to just remain in market for as long as possible by focusing on their niche. So let's talk about Salesforce, because Salesforce was able to move from being a nicher to actually being a borderline visionary, mostly trying to get into the leader, and actually have seen positive growth in the right direction because they're moving slightly up. They've gone from being a nicher to being a visionary, and we'll talk about what else they've done this year to try to get into the leader spot. So let's take a look at other things. I actually was able to find this report from a blog called Quadrant, and the source is actually at the bottom of this particular slide. You can actually see here that Dresner published a report earlier this year that has been really studying how enterprise users actually are using any business intelligence and analytics application. So this entire study that Dresner has published, this market report that they recently published, is all focusing on user and buyer behavior and measuring what is the demand globally by enterprise users for anyone that is a BI or analytics platform provider or application software vendor. And the first thing that they publish is this chart that tracks, based on the information, the surveying that they did across industries and across businesses, how are enterprise using any BI or analytics tool or platform in tracking what's going on with their business. And what we see here is that Dresner has broken this out into multiple business functions that are usually critical regardless of what type of business you have. Things like executive management, operations, finance, manufacturing, human resources, sales, IT, marketing, strategic planning, competency or some sort of center of excellence, and then R&D, which includes any development or engineering that goes on within the organizations. And they actually looked at the fact that most people are not using one, but they're using actually a whole different set of applications as they go from one function to another, and the number of applications and their vendors changes based on the function that they're tracking for the company. The other thing that also is included on this Dresden report is that certain business functions are driving a lot of demand on any BI applications. And the top ones are business operations, executive management, finance, and sales. These are the top four that are, for the most part, using some sort of application to track operations, executive management, finance, and sales. And the ones that are using the least amount of applications are things like manufacturing and human resources and R&D. Not really sure why that is, but you can actually start making me some assumptions, but those are the ones that are sort of lagging in adoption of any third-party BI or analytics tools. The ones that are early adopters within any company are the people that are really tracking operations for a business, what's going on at the executive level for executive management purposes, the financial side of companies, and also tracking sales. Same Dresden report, and looks at the number of BI tools used by function, and it really talks that across any of the functions that they're tracking, most anyone is not using one or two. Most everybody's using 3 to 4 different applications, different vendors to track everything that they're doing for that one function they own. So if you're in executive management, the majority of executive managers today are using 4 or more applications. Actually, 1 or more applications, but then there's a number of them that are using 4 or more. And then you also have marketing and sales and also operations that are using more than 4 applications and vendors to track what's going on with marketing and sales and with operations. So it seems like while most people have been focusing on creating dashboards for executives, and they're down to maybe using mostly 1 application, maybe 2. That's for executive management. Areas like marketing and sales, operations, and everybody else is actually stuck using 3 or more applications, and we're going to be in this scenario for some time is what I'm thinking. How long is this going to last? Who knows? But maybe that's what's driving some of these acquisitions, is to try to create a more complete solution for some of these companies, depending on what type of business they're in and the industrial sector that they're in and the sectors that they're selling into. So some of the same Dresden report actually talks about technology priorities and the expectation as to how that's going to shift between, or how that has shifted between 2015 and 2019. And it kind of shows a track record that the evolution over time has been to start going from dashboards all the way out to video analytics and moving over time across any of these things that can be used by any business. People have come from beyond just creating dashboards to doing more data warehousing, data discovery, creation of data lakes, and preparation of creating a lake, because it does take some time to do that, is where most everybody is focusing now, which is a piece of managing of your data before you can actually start analyzing it and figuring out what to do with your data. And then finally, the same report actually talks about, what technologies are mostly widely used across organizations. And what came out of this report is that the majority of everybody, regardless of what type of business and what function they're in, 85% of the market, enterprise users, are using spreadsheets today to do any kind of business intelligence or analytics. And what that really means is that, who's the leader in spreadsheets today? Well, that is Microsoft with their Excel application, which is part of Office Suite. And it seems like right now they're the default leader, because the majority of everybody who's doing any kind of discovery or analysis is actually using some sort of Excel spreadsheet to do their work before they actually migrate that into some BI or analytics platform. And that's what most people are currently using. You're seeing that the adoption of newer things like Hadoop, OLAP in the cloud, or data lakes, it's not so much, right? It's a minority, because usually that's less than 15% of enterprise users that are currently using any of these things today in their business operations to track any kind of metrics. So let's talk about giving the scenario. Is there a single solution? Not really, right? You think that there's a market share leader, and even though they may have lots of clients, those clients are not using them as a standalone BI or analytics solution. They're also using other applications across all the different functions that are critical for that business. So let's take a look at, maybe that's the reason why there's so many drivers towards some of these acquisitions that we're going to talk about. Things to ponder. I'd like to get your comments, and if you can actually give me your comments, you can actually type in your comments on the meetup page, which I pointed out earlier. You can actually get to with one of those short URLs and be able to include your comments regarding this facts and figures piece. Let's talk about 8 data analytics acquisitions. And this information, as I mentioned earlier, came out from this article that was recently published less than a month ago in Solutions Review, which is actually an online review website. And that organization is actually a market research firm out of Boston, Massachusetts. And the article they published recently is called 8 Data Acquisitions That Will Reshape the Industry. When I read this, and actually this is a straight synthesis of that article, it just lists the acquisitions and the reasons why they happened, what they believe they're happening, and why they believe it's actually going to be reshaping or transforming the entire industry. I'm actually questioning because in my sense, any of these moves are either going to be to defend your position, meaning you're already a leader and you're defending, or you're a challenger and you're defending your position as a challenger, or you're in a different quadrant and now you're trying to move into being a challenger or a leader, and that means you're attacking. So you're either defending or attacking your position on the Magic Quadrant if you're already a Magic Quadrant player. So let's take a look, because many of these acquisitions and maybe other players are actually on that Magic Quadrant I pointed out earlier. So let's talk about Nordic. Nordic, which is a venture capital firm, actually bought majority shares with Board. So now Board has become more of a private company owned by this venture capital firm. And if you look at is this a defensive move or attacking? Let's take a look. Because if you start looking at their position in the Magic Quadrant, and we'll talk about that, we can actually figure out if it's actually a defensive move or an attack move. But let's take a look, because Board announced the acquisition of the majority shares, a majority stake by Nordic Capital, which is a Swiss business intelligence provider, right? They've been around for some time, and they're actually in the Magic Quadrant. And the merger provides Board with much more financial flexibility. So now they have funding to do other things and be able to expand their offering across the entire world. And the private equity investor has the ability to fund their growth. And Board has been around since 1994, so they're not a new company. They're an established company. They have 26 offices around the world, 300 employees, and more than 3,000 customers in 100 countries. So they're very well diversified in clients and location and industries. What is happening with Board? Well, if you look at if the comparison that we talked about earlier of the 2016 to 2019, you look at where Board is, and Board went from being a nicher in 2016 to being a nicher and remaining a nicher, but they're actually moving backwards. If you start looking at where in the niche quadrant they're moving to the left, not the right. They're not moving towards the leader in this direction. They're moving that way, which is opposite them becoming a leader. So I'm thinking that this entire move is a attacking move, because they're trying to now figure out how to stop the bleeding, because they're going in the wrong direction. They're shifting from being moving towards becoming a leader. Their ability to design strategy and then execute on that strategy, is that gap is getting larger, and that's the reason they're moving in that direction, which is not the right direction to go in. And now with this move, I'm thinking that this venture capital firm is going to start looking at what other acquisitions they can make that will move board closer to the leader position. So I think this is purely a preparation to attack, to stop the bleeding, because they're actually losing market share and losing users to other application providers, and they need to figure out how to defend. And the only defensive mechanism that they may have right now is to actually start looking at what are the right companies that they need to acquire and then integrate to actually improve their offering and increase their user base, as well as to continue to diversify their clients across the world. So that's my summary of this particular move. 2, Logi. And Logi acquired Gymfonet software. And we talked earlier, and actually Logi has been around also for some time. They're a major player. They've been in the Magic Quadrant for some time. They were a player in 2016. They're a player in 2019. They've been around for some time. They're actually a middle market company based out of McLean, Virginia. And the move is that they're actually merging with Gymfonet, and I believe this move is really more about their focus has been that they want to be a nicher. And if you look at their position in 2016, they were in the visionary position, and now in 2019, they're in the nicher position, and the acquisitions they made, I think we're going to keep them in the niche quadrant, because they're moving also in this direction, not in this direction towards the leaders. They're moving in that direction over the last 3 years. And now this acquisition allows them to maybe get themselves anchored so they don't move further down in that direction on the niche quadrant. So I'm thinking that this is really more of a defensive move, and they're preparing to just anchor and remain a nicher by going deeper into the things they can do for their client base. Number 3, Click acquiring data integration provider Attunity for $560 million, and that was back in February. Well, if you look at what Click has been doing, and they're actually also in the quadrant, they were in the quadrant in 2016 and 2019. We'll talk about what they've done in their movement between the 3 years, in that 3-year period. But in essence, it's signaling with this, according to Solutions Review, that they're moving towards a broader data management play. In other words, they're not just becoming analytics player, but they're actually adding the data management piece that allows people to start integrating, putting formation of data lakes that can then be analyzed, and then visualizations created off of that, off of multiple data lakes that are created, and you can actually start automating that process and making it more repeatable. So their offering, once they integrate, is that they'll have a data management piece now, in addition to the analytics piece that they've had. And I want to point out that Click has also made some smaller acquisitions in the last year or so, and most of these acquisitions have been mostly artificial intelligence players, and now they're in the process of integrating and making their analytics and embed artificial intelligence into their analytics platform. So let's take a look at how their movement from 2016 to 2019, what happened to Click. And you can see that Click was a leader in 2016, and they remain a leader in 2019, but have dropped down slightly. And that is mostly because The ones that have actually progressed a lot further in that same 3-year period are Microsoft with their Power BI solution and Tableau. And I think that those two moving up has mostly been at the expense of Qlik, because Qlik has pretty much gone slightly down in the same 3-year period. And even worse, this year they have a new challenger, and that is ThoughtSpot, and ThoughtSpot is very closely positioned to Qlik. And I think that right now Qlik, if they're not in a position to buy out or acquire ThoughtSpot, they're going to be in trouble in trying to clearly differentiate their offering from ThoughtSpot's offering, and they're already losing out to Microsoft and Tableau. So I'm not really sure whether this particular acquisition is going to be enough to help Qlik not only maintain their position, but actually try to improve their position to move maybe slightly up compared to Microsoft and Tableau and get away from ThoughtSpot, because that's their main issue. Now, number 4, Alteryx, buying Menlo-based Spark ClearStory data. Again, another data science type of platform. Alteryx, we'll talk about that, is in the process of acquiring ClearStory data, and the acquisition, according to Alteryx, it will create a natural extension to the technology center that Alteryx already has, a center of excellence, that will enable the company to continue growing its presence in the data science space. Now, what does that mean? Because I'm not really sure where Alteryx is in the Magic Quadrant, or if ClearStory is a player on the Quadrant. Let's take a look at what in the context of the Quadrant. Where is each company in 2016 compared to 2019? So if you look at 2016, Alteryx is a borderline visionary, trying to move up into the leaders in 2016, and they're not in anywhere in 2019. They completely went out in 2019. So their main problem is that they used to be in the visionaries 3 years ago, and in 2019 they're completely out of the visionary quadrant. What's happening? Well, I really believe that it's a combination of all the other players and the introduction of ThoughtSpot that has made Alteryx sort of irrelevant in the marketplace. And their issue is trying to figure out how to get back into being relevant so they can get back either into the same quadrant that they were in 3 years ago, or try to move up into the challenger or the leaders. And I'm not really sure one acquisition will do it for Alteryx. I'm thinking what happens next, we'll see, but we'll have to track what they do and whether or not they're actually going to be successful in getting back into the Magic Quadrant at some point in the future. ClearStory, on the other hand, again, also ClearStory was a visionary back 3 years ago, and they're also completely out in 2019. So the two of them that used to be visionaries and now they're completely out in 2019. That's why I'm saying it's questionable as to how they're going to be performing. Now, number 5, Sisense and Periscope Data joining forces to merge and become a major BI player. Now, you would think two companies that are relatively about the same size coming together, going to be a bigger company, and now it's going to have more clients. I'm not really sure. Let's take a look at what their position is on the quadrant to see if it's going to even make any difference in whatever the merged company is the way it's going to perform in the marketplace in the future. So where is Sisense and where is Periscope? So if you look at the two companies, they're both BI providers, and in a way they're sort of a great match because they don't have very much overlap in whatever they're offering. Now, not really sure exactly what business functions Sisense is supporting mostly compared to Periscope Data, but I would imagine that while one is being used for one business function by enterprises, the other will be used by yet a different business function, and there's very little overlap between the two. Hopefully that's the case. I don't know, but we can actually start looking at, in the case of the quadrants, where each was positioned in 2016 and where they're at in 2019, and try to figure out where they're going to be in the next 3 years or so, where they're going. So if you look at the quadrant, you look at Sisense, and Sisense in 2019 is in the visionaries, and I don't see Periscope anywhere. And actually, I had to read the Magic Quadrant of 2019, the latest one, and even though Sisense is a visionary, Periscope got an honorable mention in the 2019 Magic Quadrant, but they were never given a position. So Sisense, currently a visionary, a borderline visionary, acquiring Periscope, not really sure if that move is going to move them in the right direction. It might not necessarily make a difference. I'm hoping that it does as far as profitability for the company, but I'm not really sure that it's going to really improve their ability to have the vision, the right vision for the future, and then be able to execute on that to get into the leader quadrant. We'll have to see what happens to them in the next few years. I know they're going to be larger. They're probably going to, their revenue is going to increase. We'll have to look at what happens to their profitability, which kind of tracks their ability to both, have the right strategy and the right vision for the market, and then be able to execute on that vision. Looker. The next one is Looker, now being acquired by Google Cloud. And Google Cloud has made they make multiple acquisitions in the process of a year. And Google Cloud is really trying to gain a specific position to gain over AWS, which is the major market leader in cloud services for anyone that is looking for either a major infrastructure as a service vendor or the platform as a service vendor. Google Cloud is creating its own platform and has been acquiring applications so they can add additional functionality to their marketplace, very similar to what AWS has so successfully done. So Looker is one of the acquisitions that Google has made, and let's take a look at because Google Cloud is not a BI or analytics player. They are really a platform, a cloud platform provider, just like AWS. But Looker is a BI and analytics platform, so I believe they're actually going to be adding those applications and that application suite onto anyone that is already using Google Cloud services, and make it available in the marketplace for anybody who wants to now add BI and analytics applications to their cloud-based solutions when they're Google Cloud users. So we're going to have to track that, but take a look at where Looker was in 2016 versus 2019, and what you see is that in 2016, they're nowhere. And yet in 2019, in a 3-year period, Looker comes in and actually is a nicher. And now that they've been acquired by Google, I don't think it's going to improve their position, because really the play is providing Looker, BI and analytics solutions to anyone who's a Google Cloud Services user, enterprise user. So not really sure that that's going to do much for Looker as a BI and analytics platform vendor. Number 7, Salesforce buys Tableau. Now, this is big news, because now I believe out of all the ones that we talked about, this one may be the most promising of all. So let's take a look exactly at what's happening and where they're positioned. But basically, both Salesforce and Tableau are established companies, and both have been on the Magic Quadrant for at least the last 3 years. In 2016, Tableau went from being a low leader to being a higher leader, getting closer towards Microsoft. But Microsoft has kind of shifted away faster over time in the same 3-year period. But Tableau remains a leader and is becoming a stronger leader. Salesforce, where are they at? Well, Salesforce, if you look at that at Salesforce, you're looking at Salesforce that went from being a nicher in 2016 to being a borderline visionary. They made tremendous progress, and they moved a lot in that 3-year period. So Salesforce has been really killing it, and it's really been a combination of acquisitions in addition to getting more third-party application vendors on their marketplace and turning on and enabling third-party application providers to actually place applications, enterprise applications, in their marketplace for anyone who's already using the Salesforce CRM. And that's allowed them to get from being a nicher to being a borderline visionary in 3 years. So now you look at where Tableau was 3 years ago and Salesforce, and if you're now combining Salesforce and Tableau, I'm thinking that if Salesforce can actually execute on the integration side pretty quickly with Tableau, that might be enough momentum. And right now what I'm hearing is that this acquisition, both companies will remain as standalone companies, but really working on leveraging all the opportunities as much as possible to increase the profitability of both companies. But now Tableau is going to be moving forward a business unit within Salesforce. And I'm guessing that they're going to be putting a lot of applications that are Tableau applications across business functions on the Salesforce marketplace. And that may be enough to actually move Salesforce up into the Leaders Quadrant for the first time since 2016. And Tableau may also be able to maintain their position as a leader in this quadrant over time. If this is done right, I believe really this is the most promising of all acquisitions that might actually give Microsoft a run for having a competitor now that is much more formidable and very quick to start moving into the leader and remaining in the leader quadrant, just like Microsoft has done. Number 8, Logi again. Logi making a second acquisition, acquiring Zoom Data. And with this acquisition, we've talked about the earlier acquisition. They're probably going to be remaining a nicher. Let's talk about what this second acquisition does, because this is their second acquisition. And I want to point out, first of all, Logi hasn't really made that many acquisitions over time. In the last 5 years, they've been mostly focused on doing their own organic growth, doing a lot of their own development, their own R&D to try to keep up with all their competitors. And for the most part, we've seen the results that they actually have moved and remain a nicher. We'll see what this acquisition is about. But Zoom Data will continue to maintain its platform. And actually, they're doing the same thing as similar to Salesforce. Both companies will remain in market. But now there's going to be a lot more integration between the Logi platform and the engine and the Zoom Data applications. And so I'm thinking that this will actually still continue to kind of anchor once again Logi so that they don't move further back in the nicher. They will remain a nicher and maybe might move up within the nicher quadrant, closer to that intersection between challengers and visionaries. But I don't think it's going to really bump Logi to either move from their current quadrant in 2019 to a different quadrant 2 or 3 years from now. We'll have to see what other acquisitions they have in mind, or if they make any, because I was really surprised they actually made any acquisitions, because they typically have not been a major advocate for acquiring other companies. And now I really believe they're being forced to acquire just to maintain, because they've been losing to mostly everybody else who's been doing it. And when for the most part, they haven't been making very many acquisitions. So that is a summary of number 8. The key takeaways, and I have 5 key takeaways I want to discuss. Number 1, I think Microsoft will remain a clear leader for some time. I think for the next 2 or 3 years, I think Microsoft has moved away from everybody else, and the only ones that might move closer to Microsoft in the leader quadrant may be Salesforce and Tableau, now that they are going to be working together, part of the same company. But for the most part, Microsoft will remain a leader. The next is that I really think that you want to be able to at least track what Looker is doing, because now that they're being acquired by Google, we'll have to see whether Looker will be enough of a unique value proposition for Google Cloud Services to actually start maybe making some headway against Amazon Web Services. Logi, I think they're set to remain a nicher. I don't think they're going to move up or down, and I think they're at least they're not going to necessarily move to the left within the niche quadrant. I think they're going to remain a nicher, maybe a stronger nicher, a stronger position in the niche quadrant for some time. And my main question out of these 8 acquisitions and the ones that are going to be companies that remain relevant in the marketplace 2 or 3 years from now are Alteryx and Sisense, because I'm questioning whether that was a really enough move. I'm thinking that they need to do additional moves if they're going to actually remain relevant, and that is a tall order to execute on, because they've got to be quick to integrate on the current acquisitions they just made, maintain their positions, and maybe look very quickly for their next set of acquisitions that will actually allow them to move in a different direction than what they've been doing for the last 3 years. So I would have to track and see what they are. So if you're an Alteryx or Sisense user, I would be looking for maybe some alternatives just in case. Maybe look at the way you're using those two platforms, because who knows whether they're going to be remaining in market or if they're going to be acquired by somebody else, and now you're going to have to be migrating from one BI platform or analytics platform to a different one once that acquisition is made. So this is a summary of the key takeaways of this flurry of acquisitions that have been happening in the first half of 2019. Further reading, these are the reports that I've been able to find. They're out in the open. You can actually click through the hyperlinks here and actually view. I also included some short links on the meetup page where you can go to and browse any of the information that I just discussed, and you can actually get that information. And if you have any comments or questions, feel free to contact me via email. You can connect with me on LinkedIn using this short URL. You can also follow me on Twitter, and you can also visit my web page and reach out. Let me know if you have any comments, suggestions regarding today's topic, or even if you are interested in either hosting or sponsoring a future Business Intelligentsia DC meetup. So on behalf of everyone at our meetup, I want to thank all of you for paying attention, and I'm hoping that this actually gives you some food for thought. And I hope to see you at our next meetup next month, and we're looking at September 5th is the first Thursday of September, and we're about to be making an announcement of a major corporate sponsor that wants to come in and actually do a demo as well as a workshop in the next few months. And we're right now in the process of making sure that we have all those things set up, and hopefully we'll have the announcement made in the next few days or so. So with that, I want to say thank you very much. I really appreciate your time, and I hope that you actually get some useful information out of this video. Thank you very much. Take care. Bye-bye.